talking, I don't sweat that. If they don't trust me either, I respect that. If she be down the ride, oh, I'll bet that. Ooh.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is JH. How y'all doing, Postal family? Are you good? Are you cool? Are you clean? Are you crisp? Are you feeling irie today? Haha, let's talk. But first, what we gonna talk about? We gonna talk about the union strikes and why we did and why we can't now. Yes, you heard correctly. We did strike. I'm about to show you a video and understand that the video that I show you is not the property of Jay. I am actually just screen recording and showing you the video, but I want you to see what we fought for in the past. And it blows my mind because restrictions were heavier back then and why we can't strike now. Honestly, from what I believe, the reason we can't strike now is because it is a scare tactic that was negotiated back in 1970, and what the union said was, we will no longer strike. Basically, they put that in the contract as a scare tactic due to what we just encountered, how they pretty much stopped all of America. So they negotiated this and put this inside of the contract, and for some reason it's still there. But we'll get into that in a minute. But a quote that I'd like to say is, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. But I say to the unions, take lessons from history for your future, because history always tends to repeat itself. That makes sense? History tends to repeat itself. Take lessons from it for our future. We need to know when they're negotiating table, what they're negotiating for, how they're going about doing it. And that is the video that, we've gone over this numerous times. But as far as the strike is concerned, you want to know why we have what we have today, this upcoming video shall explain it. And I'll get into detail about it right after this video. And we'll chop it up. This is going to actually raise more questions than answers. All right? Let's take a peek.
50 years ago was a time of great social change, and postal workers were right in the middle of it. In March 1970, 210,000 postal workers stood tall, stood in solidarity, defied the law, and withheld their labor, and won better pay and benefits, job security, and true collective bargaining for generations to come.
I started working at the post office in 1958.
In 1963, the salary was $1 and change an hour.
You could be standing in line at the clock and they walk up and tell you you're not punching in, go home. If there wasn't enough work, they make you punch out and go sit in the swing room.
I said, I'm making $1.78 an hour. And they had us work 89 days in a row, 11 and a half hours every day and no days off for 89 days.
You can't live in New York City on what they're giving us.
I've been told I'm eligible for welfare, but I don't want to take welfare.
We had been begging for salary increases off of the Congress.
Congress was always in charge of our pay. They gave themselves a big raise and gave us nothing.
Well, that's when the stuff hit the fan.
They called the news media in and they asked the question, are you ready to strike the post office? We gave a resounding yes. Hell yes, we're ready to strike the post office.
For the first time ever, letter carriers went on strike, and mail service in and out of New York was suspended.
We want to work, but this is the only means we have of letting Congress know that we cannot take it any longer. Either they give us what we should have, or we will stay out on strike until hell freezes over.
And it was just built up anger and tension and the support of our brothers and sisters in New York that caused those in Cleveland and Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, San Francisco to walk out.
Since Wednesday, when 6,500 New York City letter carriers refused to shoulder their mail pouches, the strike has spread from coast to coast. Now it directly affects 14 states and has involved about 200,000 postal workers.
It was a hardship because you wasn't getting paid. You didn't know how long it was that you were not going to get paid.
My kids were 10, 12, and 14, so I sat down and told them exactly what would happen if there was a strike and if I got fired. They said, Mom, you can go ahead and do it.
At 9 o'clock, all of us got up, and instead of walking to the locker room for our break, we walked straight out the door. I don't know what happened after that in the aisle. We didn't come back. We just all walked straight out the front door.
Our only work for the next few days will be counting pickets now.
We set up a picket line in front of the Pittsburgh post office.
And the first letter carrier driver, he wasn't going to cross our picket line, so he got up, parked his truck in the middle of the street, and jumped out, and refused to cross the picket line. And then all these line of postal trucks behind him, the letter carriers jumped out.
Their strike is illegal, but there is not much the government can do about it.
We figured that we were going to jail, but we believed in what we were fighting for.
It's actually the largest strike ever against the U.S. government. It was unlawful. Think about the guts where workers defied not only their bosses, they defied the government they worked for, they defied the President of the United States that ordered them back to work, and they stood strong when the troops came in to try to move the mail.
Now, I know it's against the law. That's in the Constitution. It's in my contract. If they want to put me in jail, put me in jail. But they haven't got a jail big enough to put all of us in.
I have just now directed the activation of the men of the various military organizations to begin in New York City the restoration of essential mail services.
What exactly are you doing?
I don't really know.
Do you think you're doing it as fast as a postal worker?
No, I don't. No.
They did get a few supervisors to drive trucks of mail, and one of them didn't know how to close the door and lock it on the back of the truck. So the mail bag fell out on the freeway.
It is a domestic crisis with a potential economic impact, perhaps the greatest since the Depression.
In the financial district, there was no way to schedule a stockholders meeting because there was no way to notify the stockholders or mail out the proxy statement.
When the mail stopped coming, everything stops. So everybody was looking forward for we going back.
They actually brought corporate America and Wall Street to their knees. And that's what we mean by power.
Each day we thought about it was getting to us closer. Oh my God, we're working for the United States government, what they're going to do to us. So that's 7-10 days later. Hallelujah.
And then when we found out it worked out, we shouted with joy.
Retention of civil service status, compressing the 21-year time to get the top step to 8 years, collective bargaining, and binding arbitration. Certainly you would not disagree that this is a wonderful package. Those of you normally scheduled to work at this time, return immediately to duty to serve the 200 million Americans who are entitled to this service.
Out of the strike, the post office was reorganized. The American Postal Workers Union was born out of the merger of 5 unions. And postal workers have continued to reap the benefits through struggle, through continuing struggle of collective bargaining over wages and benefits, a right that other federal employees do not have.
Well, that was quite interesting, wasn't it? Yeah. See how the Postal Service brought the whole country to its knees? Now, I do not condone striking because I don't think that the people that we have working today understand the significance and seriousness behind a strike. But for those that do, the reason we did back then was to fight for basically what people want today. All the things we keep fighting for with the toxic manager, all that happened in the past. And for some reason, history is repeating itself, huh? Ain't that something? But the main question is, why can't we strike? Again, it was added to the contract. Why? I don't know. You saw the president on there, president of the union. No one ever explained why. And, you know, there's material to read on it being in there. But why? But why? Somebody with a little bit of know-how is gonna give the reason and the answer to why in the comment section. So I'm looking forward to your reason, that it has to be factual, not opinion, not a feeling, on why we can't. Again, I don't condone it. I don't think it's necessary, but many people write me all the time and say, why can't we? So let's exchange some information, all right? Hopefully this was informative to someone. And if you have questions, ask them below. If I don't respond to your question, except with a heart, that means I read it and I don't have the answer. Remember, I'm just a truck driver. All right, this is JH. Let's chop it up.